This is none other than Marlena, aka Lois Lane. Breakfast is over. It's dinner time now. On It's Bigger Than Hip Hop with your host Jeff Hodges on iHeartRadio every Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern. It's bigger, it's bigger, it's bigger than hip hop, yeah.
What's good, family? This your host, Jeff Hodges, and you tuned into It's Bigger Than Hip Hop. You know it's Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard, live on the radio. We on iHeartRadio. We here now. About to bring it to y'all. Higher, infinite power. Healing our people with that good, great content. You know how it go. We about to bring you something that'll always empower you to tap into your best potential. So always tune in Friday, live, 10 p.m. We right here on iHeartRadio. It's Bigger Than Hip Hop, baby. I'm your host, Jeff Hodges. Stay tuned as we continue to give you what you need. Check us out on ibthhradio.com. That's right, it's Bigger Than Hip Hop Radio. Every Friday, 10 p.m. live on iHeartRadio. Tune in and see what it's about, because it's all about you.
I'm your host, Jeff Hodges. Again, guest tonight, my second guest rather, is Brian Burton, professional baseball player, author of Mindset, Awareness in Action. He's also a philanthropist and founder of XY, The Power of Infinity, a non-profit organization aimed at exposing inner-city youth to areas of travel, business ownership, and public speaking. Barton's commitment to youth outreach and empowerment is demonstrated through his ongoing speaking engagements and school appearances. So YMP family, welcome to the show, Brian Barton.
Hello, thank you. I'm just honored to be here, and I'm definitely looking forward to, having this interview with you.
Well, I appreciate you, and definitely, absolutely, it's my pleasure to have you here and taking the time out of your busy schedule. So before we get started, tell a little bit about yourself, and then we get right into the interview.
Well, I'm just like everybody else. I had a dream, and when I was growing up, I had this dream to be an astronaut and to be a baseball player. And, I kind of had this lofty idea that I would be the first baseball player to ever go into space. So from that, I still have dreams, but now my dream is, to have an impact and to change lives. And I use that motto in everything that I do now.
Okay. So my first question would be, what inspired you to write Mindset, Awareness, and Action?
Well, the inspiration to write Mindset was actually the state of the people. I observed a lot of stagnant thinking, and I saw a lot of stymied growth in communities that I visited, and just seeing that look of hopelessness and despair in the eyes of people, it sparked me to do something. But more so than anything, my inspiration came through my visit through East St. Louis when I was playing for the Cardinals. I saw and experienced a lot of closed down schools, and I saw a downtown that resembled a ghost town, and, I witnessed boarded up houses and businesses, and to me I felt that it added to that stymied growth in that stagnant thinking. So what I wanted to do in writing this book was I wanted to instill a sense of self-pride by encouraging people to believe in themselves and to take control of their lives and their minds again.
Okay. So talk about your life growing up in the adversity you went through in spite of to fulfilling your dream of becoming that major league ball player.
Well, growing up, from Los Angeles area and, kind of the heart of Los Angeles, a place where a lot of people, may see on TV that's known for its gang violence and stuff. I experienced halfway through my life, that broken home, and, I saw my parents fight at times, and, growing up in a household where, I witnessed substance abuse and even being on food stamps and stuff like that, and seeing friends and family lost to the streets, it was very hard for me. But even when I went to college, I went through a stage of depression. That was kind of, for me, a difficult situation that I had to overcome. But even in terms of my career, I was told that I was too smart to get drafted, and for me, that was kind of like a shocker. But I never let go of my dream, but more so, I never forgot how to dream. And I wanted this so bad that I felt like I'm going to do this for myself, and I felt like that I really didn't have anything to prove to anybody else but myself, because I knew that as long as I maintained that purpose and that ability to dream, that I will actually be able to get to where I need to be in life.
Now, the importance of education and knowledge, it can't be stressed enough. But share from your perspective why.
Well, for me, I look at knowledge as an investment, and the reason why, because I feel like it adds value to you as a person. See, for me, when you have knowledge, you gain perspective of the world, and when you have perspective, your eyes are open, and when your eyes are open, it opens your mind, and in turn, when your mind is open, it opens your heart. So for me, I try to use every experience that I go through, from reading a book to traveling, because I'm an avid traveler, and I try to, learn from it and gain perspective so it can open up a whole new world for me.
Okay. There are often times a seed of success in every challenging endeavor we face in life. I definitely find this to be true, and that depending on one's perception of the scenario and mind frame during that particular moment, they will too be able to receive this. In your book, you talk about embracing failure instead of running from it. Talk about what's in the possibilities when one embraces their failures.
I mean, I feel like there's everything in the possibilities. The reason why I think people run for their failures is because it feels uncomfortable. Failure has a way of judging you, and, as people, I mean, you and I know, we hate to be judged. I mean, who would want to look in the mirror and actually see their blemishes? But for me, I look at failure in a different light. You know how you have that little angel and that little devil that sits on your shoulder to try to tempt you. I actually see failure as that little angel. I see it as being your friend. Why? Because, failure actually tells you the truth about yourself, and it points out your weaknesses that you need to work on. And sometimes I feel like your successes can actually deceive you if you're not careful of them and if you're not aware of the fact. We can have a tendency of getting big-headed and a little bit over our heads sometimes. So I think that, it's important that we recognize the power of failure in foresight instead of in hindsight, because, there is jewels that result from failures.
Now, self-perception and image, how important would you say they are to us, especially coming from the areas and circumstances that you described during this conversation?
I think self-perception is very important, but I also believe that if you don't have a healthy self-portrait of yourself, it doesn't matter how anyone else perceives you. But what I do think is that for us to have a healthy self-perception and self-image of ourselves, it requires a state of honesty, a state of humility, and most importantly, accountability, so we can be able to identify who we really are. We live in a society where we have all these mediums that allow for a false sense of perception that we send out to the world, where we seem to lose touch with who we really are and what we stand for. So I believe that it's really important that, we take those three, like I said, honesty, humility, and accountability, and really, really take those serious and really look inwardly to ourselves to actually identify with who we are.
Okay. Now, I like to share a quote from documentary filmmaker Jenks Morton, and the quote goes, "Black America is on a dangerous, destructive course, and if we do not refocus our perspectives, recapture our imagery, and renew our conversation," end quote. That statement alone articulates the similarities and importance of our missions, which brings to mind a conversation I had with former editor, Essence Magazine, Susan Taylor, and after she had the opportunity to review my magazine project, that's basically where she came from. Now, here at YP Media One, and also here at Fertile Ground Network, it's our goal and philosophy to change your thinking and change your life. And with my magazine, Young Men's Perspective, we utilize and definitively recapture our imagery and create that platform to have that conversation, and we can begin the process of change. Now, I see where you have a very similar philosophy where you speak about healthy mentality equals wealthy mentality. Please elaborate on this for us.
Well, fiscally, I believe that being rich, has a tangible aspect associated to it, but being wealthy to me, I feel like has a mental aspect. This is because I believe that wealthy people have core principles that they stick to and that they pass down through generations. Well, in terms of having a wealthy mentality, I think the same applies, because I believe a wealthy mentality, carries a core set of values that that gears us toward mental success, independence, and I think once we recognize this, we can't be stopped. Because I truly believe that in order for us to succeed, we have to really stand by something that's really strong. We have to have a strong foundation. And too many times, we have this sense of thinking that's been passed down through over the generations that's just not conducive to success. And I think that we fall into those patterns because that's what we're most comfortable with.
Okay, so let's talk about controlling one's fears. How can one learn how to apply this particular thinking in regards to controlling fears to making an absolute difference in their life?
Well, I would say about 2 weeks ago, I went skydiving, and the thing that a lot of people don't know about me is that I'm actually horrified of heights. But the reason why I went skydiving was for the very reason that I was horrified of heights. And so when we talk about fear, I say that to say is that, there's two things that can happen. And your fears can either paralyze you or your fears can either move you into action. And for me, I choose to allow my fears to move me into action because I truly believe, how can we dream if we are afraid of our nightmares? If we're afraid to go to sleep, how are we supposed to, be able to experience, dreams that could potentially propel us into a life of success.
Okay. Now, the youth our messages are geared towards, they're coming from environments some would consider dead ends and hopeless. What would you tell these particular individuals with coming from these same type of situations and then becoming successful and them not seeing past their projects or the local street corner store?
Well, for me, what I would tell them is that, when you have purpose, it cannot be stopped. And so when you see those projects and when you see those local corner stores, there's greatness, in the wake of all that. There's always opportunity for better. There's always opportunity to make a change in your community. But I also want to iterate that it won't be easy because, obstacles were invented to slow down purpose. And when you're on that cusp of greatness, obstacles will always arise. It will always, come to test you and to actually see how strong you are. And it's up to us to determine whether or not we're going to actually turn away or continue to push forward.
I like that. How would you overall describe the message you were conveying in your book, and what do you want your readers to walk away with?
Well, the overall message for my book, the book is really aimed to get people thinking about their own lives again, and to move forward in their thinking and their action. We live in a society where, we have anything and everybody telling us how to think and what to do. It's from television all the way to the social media. We have these things dictating and controlling who we are as a person and controlling the way we think in our minds. And, I really believe that, with this book and we start inwardly thinking about the path of our own lives, we can start taking control of our lives. This may go over a lot of people's heads, and I'm saying this sarcastically, but I truly believe that if you're not moving, you're standing still. And that's as simple as it is. That's a concept that a lot of people, do not tend to, comprehend at times because, we tend to stay in a comfortable state, even though we know that, this is not the state that's conducive to success.
I like to say that basically it's in the same token how you said just not moving, just stand still. I like to say people are on a treadmill of life and they're not going nowhere, they just sit still. But definitely, when I think about all the successful people throughout history, they had the commonality of knowing that regardless of the obstacles, regardless of those who said no, and regardless of the circumstances, they still saw their vision and they persevered to make it happen. And that's one of the things that I try to stress with my programming and all the things that I'm doing media-wise in terms of reaching out to the youth.
And absolutely, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying by not forgetting to dream. I think, we teach our kids growing up. We grow up, teaching them to prepare for the real world too soon. And from then we lose our ability to dream, to imagine, to be creative. Why? Because, we feel like now we have to get into this responsibility mode, and we're supposed to be in adult mode at the age of 5, 6, 7 years old. And so when we do get to that age, our growth is stymied because, we don't have that sense of imagination that, that normally should develop and actually that should develop at a flourishing rate, while we're kids. And so when we get to an age, where we're older, we tend to lose touch of that, and so we have no other choice but to kind of sit in a stagnant state.
Now let's talk about your nonprofit, XYP Infinity, Empowering Lives to the Infinite Power. First, what inspired you to create this organization?
Well, the same reason that, I wrote my book, was my stay in East St. Louis, and those things that I touched on earlier, seeing those abandoned buildings, seeing those boarded up businesses and that downtown, it caused me to think, like, wow, if you have a place that doesn't even resemble a sense of hope, when we used to look across the river in St. Louis, Missouri, and then you look at East St. Louis, Illinois, I mean, it's like, how you expect people to have hope when they don't have signs of hope, when they don't have the resources. And so for me, I use my platform and, as a way to say, hey, let me do something for the community. But first, before, we can start providing hope for these kids, we have to start changing the way, they're thinking. We have to start giving them perspective. So what I wanted to do with my organization was to provide an organization that exposes kids to the prospect of traveling, which is something that's very dear to me, and that's a passion of mine. Business ownership, which I feel that is one way you can get a community thriving again. You start getting the people active in their community and to become business owners and job creators, and public speaking, because, in inner cities, a lot of our children don't have a voice. But you start getting these kids comfortable with their voice, I feel like we can build local and global leaders that will in turn come back to their communities and help revive their communities.
That's basically the same idea and thinking I have in terms of creating this whole media outlet. Mm-hmm. It was intended for the youth to have the opportunity to learn how to, like you said, become secure in utilizing your voice, knowing you have a voice, mm-hmm. and how to project your voice. So we definitely we see that together, and I like that. Now talk about a little bit of the opportunities that you've provided and some of the things that the youth have been exposed to.
Well, like right now, I go around and I speak to the youth. We're still in the beginning stages of the foundation. So what one of the things I plan on doing and that I want to incorporate in the foundation is to have something where, we provide all these youth with passports, so that can eliminate one hurdle that kids who may not be able to afford it, wouldn't have to worry about, because when you're in a position where you're fighting for survival, when you're trying to put food on the table, the last thing that you're worried about is providing a passport or getting a passport for your kids. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a program that get these kids passports, then at the same time start to build up a fundraising network, whereas we can start taking these funds and actually sending these kids to different countries and different states and different places around the world, or even around the United States, so they can start gaining a different perspective of the world. Because like I said earlier, when you gain perspective, it opens your eyes, and the only way you can really open your mind and your heart is if you see things from a different light.
Now, as an avid traveler, as you mentioned, and it being your passion, share with my listeners, because, again, we address and geared towards the youth to giving them insight, why and what's so important about being able to travel and what they would gain from being able to travel as well.
Well, when I first took my first trip to Ethiopia, I was in college, and that was the first time I've ever been so far away from home. I was on the other side of the world, and I actually went by myself. But what it did was that it gave me a first-hand view of how people live instead of having to actually listen and hear from other people. I saw it for myself, and what I realized is that what I was gathering from other people and actually what I saw for myself was two completely different things. And I think that's what actually got me to traveling more, because I felt like there's so much more to learn about the world. And when you when you allow yourself to have that opportunity, it gives you a greater appreciation for what's out there, and it gives you a sense of humility, and it makes you want to share it with everybody else, because I feel like, once again, once you open yourself up to that, and open your mind and start expanding that way of thinking, you know what I'm saying, you allow yourself the ability to be able to really, really make impact in your community, because now you have experience that you can share with other people.
Now you have the other program in terms of teaching the youth how to become business owners. What's your vision in terms of that component to your organization?
Well, the vision for the business ownership is, once again, to expose these kids to the idea of being entrepreneurs. And, you know, we all have our dreams, but we don't know how to go about we don't know how to go about fulfilling them. And I feel like, you know, we provide mentors to these kids, and, you know, we teach them the basic of economics, and, you know, of filling out balance sheets and reading them, and monitoring their money and stuff like that, but also having them, you know, create ideas or put their ideas on paper and actually create a business and actually put it in work, because, you know, people have ideas all the time. Kids have ideas. We may think they're as small or as simple as possible, but I mean, they're just hungry for help, but they don't know where to go for help. So, you know, we teach them this basic knowledge of how to become an entrepreneur and actually put them out, you know, in the real world to see how that process goes. I feel like, you know, it'll prepare them, and it'll allow them to be comfortable, you know, further down the line, and actually going out there and becoming community leaders in terms of being job creators. So it's exposed them to that arena, you know, build their knowledge up in that area, and in turn use them skills that's attained to actually bring jobs and businesses back to their communities, so they can help revive their communities.
Brian, I want to thank you so much again for taking out this time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you, and I wish you continued success with your book tour, as well as with your organization and your baseball career.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being on the show.
Great. Again, if you want to learn more about Brian Barton or Mindset Awareness in Action, please visit his website, www.brianbartonaccess.com.
You know, it's Bigger Than Hip Hop, and I'm your host, Jeff Hodges. And joining me tonight is none other than Atlanta-based artist and hot mixtape master Preach Music, here to talk about his latest release, The Rising of a Trilogy, Volume 1, now. Without further delay, help me welcome to the show, Preach Music. What's good, Preach?
Yo, what's going on, man? What's happening, Jeff? How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm good. Like I said, man, I'm feeling your music and couldn't wait to sit down with you to talk about it.
That's right. I appreciate you having me, man.
Definitely. Now, you grew up in Texas, or rather, you're from Texas, but you grew up in Phoenix, Arizona at the height of the crack epidemic, raised in that abusive home, found yourself a homeless runaway at 13, drug dealing and gangbanging to survive. You moved from home to home, in and out of that foster care system, but in spite of it all, you took all those negatives and used music and writing as a way to escape that world that surrounds you. And your songs you depict real-life tales with that truth riding a mean beat. My question is, what do you want your listeners to walk away with after listening to A Rising of a Trilogy, Volume 1 now?
Basically, what I want my listeners to walk away with is, I'm taking my listeners on a different journey in each song. I'll speak on 86 in particular. When I was doing 86, my thought process with that song was, it's a misconception that us as a people are inferior. I wanted to do somewhat of like a mini documentary within that song to show that there's a root to the reasons, or this is a result of the nonsense and the oppression that we've been put through as a people. So it's not a fact, or it's not a case that we are inferior or something is wrong with us, or that we don't have the ability to build. It's clear if you look through history and you do research, and you can see the obstacles that were purposely placed in front of us to trip us up along the way. So my intent with The Rising as a whole is basically to speak from a standpoint of a cat that's in the street, but try to bridge them to a place to spark a thought so that they can go on and listen to other people or they'll be more apt and open to listen to another person that's bringing straight knowledge, and I'm trying to give them a bit of that in my music as well.
And I'm telling you, I'm definitely feeling you when you talk about that and how you presented it, when you talk about that trilogy, you released that Heaven to Hell video that features you sitting on the front steps and sharing the world through your eyes, as you said. And really, I'm really feeling that track and the message. And if I had to describe your style, it definitely reminds me of Tupac, speaking more on the social inequities that you see happening every day in our hood. How would you describe your music and the intent and your message?
Well, like I said, once again, it's funny you brought that up. You know, when I was out in the streets like that, and I remember coming up, you know what I'm saying, in the 90s, we had music, especially in the golden age, we had music that spoke to our spirit. So I remember being on the block. I remember having that jar dope and seeing, you know what I'm saying, the devastation on the block and the pain and everybody trying to drown the pain and sherm and alcohol and it wasn't no hope. And that music that Brothers was putting out, him in particular, was a healing music. So I remember putting that on and feeling like, oh, you know what? It's somebody going through what I'm going through. You know what I'm saying? So especially being a runaway and being 13 when it was like, man, don't nobody give a – there was a particular time where I felt like, man, don't nobody give a – you know what I'm saying? I don't want to use no crazy words. I don't know what the listener base is. Don't nobody care about me. You know what I'm saying? So – and I remember he shed so many tears and being like, bro, that's how I feel. You know what I'm saying? And it was a healing not only for me but the people I was around. So that's my same intent. I want a person to feel like, yo, you know what? He understands what I'm going. When I listen to this music, somebody feels my pain. Somebody feels what I'm going through. Or that's what I was thinking, but I couldn't articulate it. You know what I mean? The way I wanted to. So that's my intention with it. Basically, just to be a voice for the voiceless. What I believe hip hop was originally intended for in the first place.
No doubt. Now, you had a unique set of life experiences, as we mentioned earlier, that have prepared you, no doubt, for this moment in time of your career. And it's at this moment you're ready to not only tell your story as you do in your music, but the story of many young African-American men lost in the streets of America. Now, a lot of artists typically romanticize and glamorize that life. You offer insight into that lifestyle coming from a cautionary tale perspective, in my opinion. What do you say to people who say you sound like all the rest when it comes to your lyrical content?
Could you repeat that end part again?
So what do you say to people who say you sound like all the rest when it comes to your lyrical content?
I mean, I can't sound like nobody else. You know, the Most High gave me this throat, you know what I'm saying, and this voice box. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. I mean, us as artists, it's just like if you're a painter. If you're a painter and you go sit on the corner and you get your brush and you a narrator, you know what I'm saying, with words, and if you look around, if ain't nothing changed, then what else can I present to you? You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is what's going on. This is the truth of what's going on. So I love to tell you about something else, and I only can do what's true to me. So I can't, when I go into my creative process, I can't dig in and grab something that's not there. You know what I mean? So I have to speak to what's real. I have to speak to what it is, and I feel like there is other artists that are doing what I'm doing, and I champion that. I think there's a place for everything. There's just an imbalance at this point. So this is what it is. Once again, I mean, all of those different perspectives are true. The main thing is that my voice is my voice. So when it comes on and you hear that, that's unique to everything else because every individual's voice is unique. Every style should be unique, and in a lot of cases they are. You know what I mean? True.
Now, since listening to the trilogy, my question would be, have you transformed from that life you speak about in that whole, album, and if so, how?
Most definitely. Man, I had an opportunity when I was younger to get a record deal. It was an independent label out of Phoenix, Arizona. Shout out to 4 Life Records. And that situation took me out of the street. Excuse me. So I hadn't completely, it takes time to completely transcend from that.
Right.
But that took me out of having to be on the block or having to do nonsense or put myself in a position to get in the prison industrial complex. So at this point, I completely transcended. At this point, I want to be a bridge to like I said once again, to the cats that's still in that space, and then give them some insight to where that they can pick up on what I'm saying and maybe get into some of the deeper knowledge. Now, at the same time, I'm an artist first, so I still have to be honest. So if you listen to the trilogy, you probably may still hear a bit in there, but I make sure I position it in a way because I still got to be honest to what's real out here. I'm not going to act like I'm holier than thou or that I still don't have these experiences. You know what I'm saying? But I definitely take more responsibility with what I'm saying and making sure that I'm not continuing to perpetuate the nonsense that's railroading youngsters into prison because I know how influential the music can be. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to do that, and I don't want to glorify that. And if my personal opinion, anybody that's really from that, or that's really, really from that, deep from that, they don't really want you. Most of the time I've come across cats like that, they don't want you in that. They're going to try to say, man, you don't want no parts of this, or this ain't nothing to glorify. I wish I had an opportunity. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
This is a result of poverty and oppression, and that's where I'm coming from. This is just a narration of the results of that, not I'm flawed, because that ain't even true. Let's keep, you know what I mean? Like I said once again, if you really out there, that ain't true. That's not true. It ain't glamorous, unless you're getting drunk to make yourself believe it's glamorous, but it ain't. You in pain, you stressing, you working harder trying to sell dope than you would trying to get a job just as hard as building a business. You up 20 hours a day, you ducking the police, ducking jack boys, you know what I mean? So it's not, there's nothing to glorify in my opinion.
Nah, I love it too. I love it. 1986, man, that was one of them years that seemed to stand out from others. You created a time capsule video with your song 86, and you tap on all the aspects of that particular year, from Adidas to Crack Babies, Rev Run, and to Reagan. And this, as I said, definitely is one of my favorite joints. Tell us what inspired this masterpiece, soon to be classic.
Yeah, it was the same thing, man. I was 6. You know what I'm saying? If we get up with my age out there, I was 6 when it was 86, and it was just, I thought that was a significant turning point from, well, we know what was happening in the 40s, the 50s. We know when the nation came. We know when there was a movement in the 60s. You had the civil rights movement. You had the Nation of Islam that was prevalent. Even prior to that, in the 20s and 30s, you had the UNIA with Marcus Garvey. And I was just taking it from where it went. And then when 86, to me, I felt like that was the key point when in the 70s they eliminated the Black Panther Party with the COINTELPRO, and they eliminated all of those leaders. And then they pumped the crack. So I'm saying right then, we still had fathers in our residence. We were still in poverty, but we still had some semblance of a community. And I meet cats. I remember being in the streets and people be like, yeah, man, when crack came, my whole family fell apart. I remember my mama had a job, my daddy and mama were together, and crack came and my whole house fell apart. You know what I'm saying? So that was what I was trying to outline with 86, was that there was some specific attacks against us biologically, economically, that created the condition we in. When I talked to the Scarface movies and the Colors, I remember when Colors came out, and there was no games. I was in Texas at that time. There was no game banging. A week after, it was packs of cats walking up the street talking about, what up, cuz, what up, blood. So why? We don't have the money Hollywood has to push this image out, to mesmerize and influence the kids, and people say, oh, it's just entertainment. Nah, man, that's subliminal messaging. So why is it, if you was to do a study, you see the result. So you can't continue to use the scapegoat as it's just entertainment. And that's basically what I was trying to say.
I love it. Now, you're definitely killing the mixtape game and writing some hot joints. Your latest joint you dropped for BET Presents Ammo 52 Blocks featured a song, Heart of a Warrior, which also was featured in the full documentary Gun Hill. How did the opportunity come about, and tell us what that experience was like?
Oh, man, that was a dope experience, man. It seemed to be an alignment of the stars, man. I don't know if my brother wanted me to put his name out there, but I got a partner out in Los Angeles. He gave me a call with the opportunity, and man, I wrote it, recorded it in the night, sent it back, and was blessed with the opportunity. He sent me over some footage. If you see in the video, some footage from Jamal Joseph that excuse me, Lorenz Tate used to prepare for that role, he sent me that same footage, and it did something to me. I was like, man, that's what's up. And I just did my thing, got in my zone, and came over Heart of a Warrior, and was blessed to have it be placed.
No doubt, no doubt.
That came for.
Now, you're letting go of those free downloads of The Rising of the Trilogy Volume 1 now on your website, preachmusic.com/The Rising. But I also understand you're gearing up to release an onslaught of new material of your own independent label, New Dynasty Enterprise. When can we expect that next volume of the Trilogy project to be released?
I'm working on it now. Actually, my next plan really is to drop singles. So I'm just going to start putting work out there. So I don't necessarily have a date. But it's probably going to come out of left field, to be honest. But you can definitely expect more music and more videos soon, probably as soon as end of August, September. You'll start hearing.
That's what's up.
And it'll be consistent.
What do you see yourself saying 5 years from now as an artist?
Man, I definitely believe in so a man thinketh, so he is. So,
right.
I'm just shooting for the stars, bro. Like I definitely expect to be in a good spot. I'll say that. I definitely expect to be in a good spot. I'm humble about and appreciative of every opportunity that come forth. So, I'm just working hard, keeping my mind to the stars and shooting for the stars, and I pray that I got a significant place, not in the ears of music fans. I'm not necessarily trying to be in the industry. I'm just trying to create an industry within myself, within my brand, and hopefully I can end up in a place that's comparable to what mainstream artistry would be considered.
No doubt. You're definitely doing that. You're doing your thing. Share with my listeners, are there any up-and-coming shows that we should be on the lookout for?
No shows right at this moment, but you can go to preachmusic.com. You can follow me at Twitter, /preachmusic. That's MUZAK. And, I'm always updating information there. You can go to my YouTube channel. That's YouTube /preach channel. And those are basically the pages I'm pushing. Facebook been suffocating folks' reach a little bit, so I updated.
Right.
Definitely want to, if you definitely want to get the information right off bat, just hit me up on Twitter. Those outlets I just mentioned.
For sure. Man, I often find myself, as I spoke to you earlier, apprehensive to what type of artists we bring on the show, mainly because everyone who can rap and rhyme a few words doesn't necessarily mean they actually have anything to say even or worth listening to. When I heard you, it immediately resonated with my spirit, more so because you share, as I mentioned, cautionary tales and what it is and like in that street life, and you warn your listeners of the consequences regarding that life. So, Preach, it's definitely been an honor and pleasure having you on the show, and I'm wishing you continued success. It's bigger than hip-hop, Playboy.
All right, no doubt, brother. I appreciate you having me, and hopefully, we'll be in touch, bro. Keep it moving.
No doubt. Before you go, you like to share any closing remarks to my listeners?
Oh, man, know thyself, man. Make sure that look into your history, that you're not being taught it, and then look into what happened, and then get out of the victim mentality. And when I say get out of the victim mentality, it don't mean don't recognize the attacks against you, but don't feel like you can't defeat it. And, follow your heart.
No doubt. Again, it's been a pleasant honor, and I thank you again for taking the time to share with us on It's Bigger Than Hip Hop.
All right, brother. I appreciate you having me, man.
No doubt.
All right, and we back, y'all, as promised. I told you we was going to get the old school in here, y'all. You know how that go. So, as I told you, we was going to bring a legend, pioneer the game, and as promised, on the phone joining us live in the building, Said G. What's going on, Playboy?
Good, fam.
All right. Definitely a fan and appreciate what you've done in bringing the music in and introducing it to the world with your flavor,
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yes, sir, man. You guys definitely was instrumental with the sampling, and you definitely took it to another level. I mean, where was it that you guys was looking to take it when you got into the game as far as being ultra magnetic MCs?
like the Grandmaster Flashes, the L Brothers, known as the Fantastic Romantic Freak, or Five, the Cold Crush Brothers. So it was like groups like those, they were just so powerful.
Right.
That it influenced us. But what happened is when they actually started making the records, the record labels started using live bands, and it wasn't the same as what they were doing in the jam. So our thing was, along with all the other next tier, the Rakim, the Shan, all of us, all we Mars, our thing was to get that sound back.
Right.
But back then it wasn't about fighting, so nobody wanted to imitate them. We just wanted to get the sound back, but we all got our own styles. So the thing was to get the sound back to the street.
Indeed.
What they created. And that was my thing, was to make it sound exactly like it used to in the park.
Absolutely. Now, we ain't got a lot of time, so I'm going to try to catch on a couple of topics. Like, one being, what's the deal, man? I mean, you was a super duper producer, A&R, with a lot of artists, Nas being one of them, my man Karis one, and Speaker Karis one. Why not the full credit for what you've done on that particular project, Criminal Minded? Why he gave like the slight with the whole, appreciation or whatever?
That was because the cat who was the president of the label, he was a shyster. He was one of those country liquor bootleggers, porn industry. He was dirty.
Right.
So it was my fault, really, because Scott kept telling me, because me and Scott was like brothers.
Indeed.
Scott kept telling me to stay on him about that, and I was like, nah, he said he got me. Scott was like, yo, I'm telling you, he's dirty, man. You got to stay on him. Got to stay on top of him. And then when it came out, Brett, it's just weird because people read it and they don't understand what it means.
Right.
Produced by Boogie Down Productions, Shoe Banks said, gee.
Right.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. Also, talk about, I know that you launched your label, Faction Entertainment. You got a couple artists on your belt. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, see, actually, right now I'm driving down to North Carolina to hook up with some cats, talking about a little merger. Cause the thing is, my thing is I'm not doing anything right now until I know it's solidly placed with the foundation solid so that it can be big. See, a lot of people, they're doing things now because you can, but see, it's a big circus out there. And if your foundation ain't entrenched deep into the ground, you ain't gonna make it through all the clutter.
Right.
I don't care what your name is. Not unless you got millions of dollars, money, you can buy advertisement and cut through anything. So you just operate regular, you gotta know what you're doing.
Indeed. Now, you guys are still going on tour, I take it, right? Traveling around, getting it in, true?
Yeah. But right now, I even shut that down because I'm so focused. We so close to getting this thing the way I want it.
Right.
This thing correct. And I have to shut all that down because it's a bigger picture.
Got you. Now, as an artist, you travel around the world, and overseas, they receive hip-hop on another level. I mean, they really love it. Talk about some of those experiences, and why is it that they receive hip-hop so openly and readily over there as they do?
Well, I think it's because they never had the experience I'm telling you about, the jam, the outside park jam,
right.
The community-centered jam. So the thing was overseas was that they really didn't want you. When we went over there, and it's still like that till today.
Right.
When you go, I'm talking about the real hoods over there, not the the urban cities, stuff like that. When you go into the hoods, they really don't want to see you do your record. They want you to do it, but it's not why they're really there. They want to see what you got. That's not on the record. That's not on the album. They want to hear you freestyle. That's why the bigger groups overseas were Chris, Rakim, Kane. You know, the cats who freestyle, who gave the crowd stuff they didn't hear on any album, stuff like that.
Right.
And they wanted, you know, because they never had that. So that's why they appreciate it more. See, we had it. You know how America is. You had it, you chewed it, you spit it out. What's next?
Indeed. Happy belated birthday. And as we know, hip-hop has definitely made its rotation around the planet once again. It's reached its 40th year. What's your thoughts on hip-hop and where it is today? And where you think and imagine it can go?
Well, it is what it is. There's a lot of bad, but there's some good. And once again, see, rap is kind of steered in direction. So the thing is who's going to come out and give it some more direction than just hopping there on what everybody else is doing.
Right.
But see, people will say, oh, they like trap now and all that. I'm like, yeah, but there was a cat who said, I'm going to do trap. You understand what I'm saying?
Indeed.
You have to provide a change. Somebody has to step out and be the leader. See, what happened is that cat who said, I'm going to do trap, when he jumped off, then everybody jumped off and said, we're going to do trap because trap is hot. So the thing is, like I said, to get your roots deep into the ground so you can properly promote what you're doing to make it elite. And then have a bunch of people following you. You be the trendsetter. See, that's what business basically is in any genre, is those who do it right and they jump off and then everybody follows them. So that's what it's about. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that cat, whoever started that, because, you know, I don't follow trap that deep, but whoever started it, bunch of people hopped on it on their boat. So that's all that is, man.
Absolutely. Ayo said it's definitely been an honor and a pleasure speaking to the legendary one from the Ultramagnetic MCs. Man, it's definitely been blazed to see and do what you guys have brought to the game. Continue success, and next time we can get you, we can really go the distance. True?
All right, fam. I'm sorry for the late call, but you know I'm on the road, like I said.
Oh, no doubt. Respect. We appreciate
so
your time.
Gas up and
no doubt.
Lighten up the oil, all that.
No doubt. It's bigger than hip hop, baby. That's our very special guest, Shed G, Ultramagnetic MCs, legendary pioneer. Salute, bro. We appreciate you here at YMP Radio. Before you go, give us that YMP Radio drop, man. Let them know where you at and what you're listening to it on.
Yo, this your boy, Shed G. Listen to YMP Radio all day, all night. All right?
Peace and love, brother. We appreciate you, man. Stay up, man. We look forward to hearing what you're doing, man, in the future. We definitely going to reach back out.
All right, fam.
Peace.